So, lunch break November 2020, the new Entrant Center. Today's outline, we're going to cover briefly a bit about the farming background in Nova Scotia. We're going to chat about Nova Scotia's Christmas tree industry as a whole, get into the details of what the Christmas Tree Council of Nova Scotia does, as well as the regional associations. We're going to chat about our main commodity in the Christmas tree industry, which is the balsam fir product. We're going to go over the Christmas tree production cycle, a very condensed version of it. And then I'm going to share some of the big resources and contacts in the industry for new entrants getting into Christmas tree production. Following that, I'm going to have a lengthy question period to allow any people joining us today to pose their questions that they have about getting into the industry. And I'll take some time to answer your questions. And as I mentioned earlier, all of this will be recorded. So if you need to skip out, no worries. It will be on the YouTube channel following today. So let's get started. Farming in Nova Scotia. So on the right-hand side of your screen there, I've got a couple of logos that you should start to recognize if you're interested in farming in this province. Nova Scotia New Farmer, that is a website which is an initiative put on through the Department of Agriculture and Perennia. And basically what this website does is offer a bit of a catch-all environment for resources and contacts that you might need when you're starting to get into the agriculture industry in Nova Scotia. So you can go directly to this web page and it will break down whatever commodity you're interested in starting out in. It'll show you who your regional contacts are and basically just lead you through some of the prep work to get into farming. There's information there about farm registration, a lot of the funding programs that are available through the CAP, being the Canadian Agricultural Partnership, which is a federal and provincial partnership to provide funding, and a whole other host of different contacts that you might find useful as you're starting to get going. That second one there, that's Perennia's logo. So as I mentioned, I work as an extension and research specialist at Perennia for the Christmas tree industry, but we have specialists across the province for a multitude of commodities. So regardless of what commodity you're interested in starting farming in, there's a good chance that you'll be able to find an expert or subject matter expert at Perennia to support you. Perennia offers analytical services. They do real-time research and also have those industry specialists at your convenience. The Department of Agriculture through the province of Nova Scotia has a whole host of shops that are designed to help not only new entrants but ongoing entrants as well. So the Department of Agriculture, that's where you go to for your programs. You go through them partially for your farm registration, and they have regional offices across the province to offer support on a day-to-day basis for new people entering the farming industry in the province. The one at the bottom there is the Nova Scotia Federation of Agriculture. They are the voice for farmers across Nova Scotia. So they do a lot of the advocacy work and offer a multitude of services and programs. I can provide individual contacts for any of these different companies if you are interested. Just send me a message in your chat box or reply to my email at the end of this. Let's get a bit more specific. Nova Scotia's Christmas tree industry. I've got a few numbers here on the left-hand side of your screen that just starts to kind of show a picture of how big Christmas trees are in Nova Scotia. So Christmas tree exports, mainly balsam fir, all of the Christmas trees grown in Nova Scotia either go to an export industry or they're sold to a retailer or a broker and stay in the province. 90% of the trees that are grown in Nova Scotia for Christmas trees are exported. The four biggest ones are listed there for your interest, and that export totals around $7 million a year. This supports more than 300 growers in the industry and more than 4,000 full-time and part-time jobs. And what's interesting about Christmas trees is that the demand is continually increasing right now. So if there was ever a good time to get into Christmas tree farming in Nova Scotia, it is right now. So now on to the Christmas Tree Council of Nova Scotia. If you aren't familiar with the council, this will be a quick little overview for you. The Christmas Tree Council of Nova Scotia was incorporated in 1975. It's a not-for-profit organization that is run by an elected board of directors. They focus mainly on doing promotions for the Christmas tree industry, serving as in advocacy roles, offering programs and services, doing the levy legislation, and supporting research and industry development, among a whole host of other things. So the council itself, CTCNS is their short name. You can see that there on your left-hand side. It's a bit of the umbrella organization for the three main regional associations, that being the Lunenburg County Christmas Tree Producers Association, the Northeastern Christmas Tree Association, and the Cobequid Christmas Tree Producers Association. Each of those going to a different territory. So evidently Lunenburg, Northeastern, which covers your Antigonish-Guyboro area, and Cobequid region, which is your more central location. Breaking it down a little bit further into your regional activity. So that first one there, Lunenburg County's Christmas Tree Producers Association, is very active. They have a board of directors. They have an experimental lot where they have a whole host of different experiments going on a day-to-day basis, and they also harvest some trees out of that for sale and work on it together as a membership. They host field days and annual general meeting, various competitions, and support marketing of their growers throughout the year. So if you are located in the Lunenburg County region, chances are someone you talk to in Christmas trees will be involved in that Christmas Tree Producers Association, and it's a very good spot to join and learn. Northeastern's Christmas Tree Association is fairly similar, although they are their own entity in a brokerage. So Northeastern would purchase an awful lot of trees on a year-to-year basis from their growers within their membership. They also offer professional grading, so the quality of the trees, they'll go out and grade trees for you. They do field days, annual general meeting, marketing support, and sales support, similar to what Lunenburg County would be doing for their region. The Cobequid Christmas Tree Producers Association similarly offers technical field days, an annual general meeting, and ongoing annual grower support as it's needed. Cobequid is a smaller association, but they still offer many of the same services. Now I'm going to get into chatting a little bit about balsam fir. So the main export that's coming out of Nova Scotia for Christmas trees is the balsam fir species. That's what that's what Nova Scotia is known for, that scent of Christmas that comes from the balsam fir. So these are some standardized characteristics of the balsam fir Christmas tree. It grows abundantly across the province of Nova Scotia. It loves our climate and does very well here. So we're able to grow balsam fir with minimal inputs and produce a very good, very competitive tree. The Christmas tree production cycle. So, for anyone who is new to the industry, this is the very, very basic cycle of what a Christmas tree goes through in its life. So, it would begin with site preparation. So, in Nova Scotia, the majority of our sites or Christmas tree lots would be natural regeneration or natural regeneration with stand interplanting. So, what that means is that the majority of our lots have been cultivated out of wild stands, and over the years, enough trees have been called that we now have the majority of them being balsam fir, um, which are set up to be produced as Christmas trees. So they are maintained on an annual basis. There are other options as well. You can go the plant station style model, which is what you usually see with photos coming out of the States. So you'd have trees in kind of a row system and you would manage them in a row system as well. The site preparation, it's going to take an awful lot of planning. So you'll have to decide whether you want to go ahead and try to do that plantation style model or whether your existing lot could be cultivated into a natural regenerative stand and what the associated risks with that might be. You'll also have to look into sourcing seedlings. So if you're going to be planting seedlings out, we usually recommend that you try to get on a list early with the local nursery so that you'll actually have enough seedlings to go in the ground when spring planting rolls around. We have a whole host of other technical webinar sessions that are already uploaded to the channel, establishing Christmas trees, that touch a lot more detail on the site preparation. But that's one of the things that you need to start with is deciding what you want to have because Christmas trees have such a long turnover time. We're talking between 8 to 12 years. You can see that arrow there to grow a Christmas tree. You really have to be planning before you plant that first tree what your markets are going to look like, what your spacing needs to be to reflect that, and etc. The next kind of phase in the Christmas tree production cycle is planting. So this is where you need to think about what kind of lot density you would like to see, and usually that's going to depend on your markets, which are sometimes pretty hard to predict if they're almost a decade away. So an awful lot of planning has to go into this, and when you do get to the planting stage, your investment in seedlings, you need to consider that and really think about spacing them so that you meet your optimal lot density and are able to have the stand that you envisioned in 8 to 10 years' time. That third dot that you see there is annual maintenance, and this is what's taking up the most amount of time. So somewhere around a decade is what it's going to take you to grow a tree. Again, that's going to be entirely dependent on what you have for a site, what you have for soils, the inputs you put in, so fertilizing, pesticides, how well you manage pests and disease, how many pests and disease you have in the first place to need managed, and how good a job you're doing at shearing every year. So, shearing every year, we say you have to go in. Usually, we recommend to start kind of mid July to late August and go into the fall until you're finished. That's the ideal time. But a lot of it is going to depend on what your individual schedule is like. So the big factors in a tree's life are going to be its inputs, being that pest and disease management, fertilizing, and also how good a job whoever is shearing the tree is doing. And that's what's going to really close your window and produce a tree in a faster amount of time, which ultimately is our goal because every year you have your tree out in the field, it's costing you money. Finally, after you do that for a decade, you come to the harvest time. So when you get into harvesting, it's time to think about markets. Ideally, you set out a market well before you started your site, but likely those would have changed over time. So you need to think about what your market's going to be. That'll come into what height you need your trees to be, what density, what grade the trees are, and a lot of that will be reflected in your management practices. So you'll know what you'll have to end up with. You also need to think about sales. So, are you going to be selling them directly into a brokerage? Are you going to sell them out of a retail lot? Are you going to do a U-pick? Are you just going to export them? There's a lot of different options in the industry, so this is something that you really need to be considering. Baling is another one of the activities that happens along with the harvest. If you have a tree baler, they're often necessary for doing any kind of exports. They're really nice if you have a U-pick lot to be able to bale a tree for somebody to put on top of their car, that type of thing. So that's another input cost that you may or may not have, and it's something to consider when you're planning your production cycle. And finally, shipping. So if you're going to be exporting or even shipping to another retail lot, you need to think about how you're going to go about doing that. And you need to locate a shipper that you trust and can work with on a annual basis. So when you consider all of these kind of seemingly little things that go into a Christmas tree production cycle, and you get that tree there on your right hand side, that's kind of what makes it all worth it. So you say 8 to 10 years, maybe even 12 years to grow a good crop. Why would anybody do that? But you do it because people enjoy it and you get to put smiles on children's faces. So a lot of these planning and skills go into that final picture there. So now I'm going to run through pretty quickly the resources and contacts. I've also mentioned a few of the technical resources that we have available right now through the Christmas Tree Council or through Perennia. There are far more here that aren't listed today. And if you have specific questions on anything in particular, I would encourage you to type it into your chat box and let me know so that I can answer those today for you. So, anything to do with a site assessment. So, if you're starting out and you would like someone to come out and take a soil sample for you and give you some advice about what trees to call on your existing stand or where might be a good spot to plant, we can do that through Perennia. I can make arrangements to come right out to your site, give you some recommendations free of charge, um, and basically just provide a bit of a site map and walk you through some of that planning process that I discussed earlier. I also give a variety of recommendations, so that's inclusive of fertilizer recommendations, pesticide recommendations, recommendations for management practices, that type of thing. Diagnostics, usually that's a diagnosis of a disease on a tree if you're experiencing problems when you're a little further along, or identification of a pest that you haven't seen before, also practices to do to mitigate that risk. We offer in-field support on a variety of different things. If you're seeing something new in your trees that you're not sure what it is, we can always come out and offer some suggestions on how to implement that. And finally, I do an awful lot of research with the Christmas Tree Council. So we now have a research team. You can see there in the third row, research projects. The Christmas Tree Council, jointly with Perennia, is currently undertaking two main research projects, one of them being the Smart Tree Project, which is an extension of the work that was previously done at Dalhousie University. So that is trying to improve Christmas tree genetics so that the trees are fuller, have a better natural taper to them, good shape, they grow very well, and ultimately they retain their needles very well. So we'll soon have those trees ready to go to market over the next few years, but right now we're testing them in the field to make sure that they're going to be high performers and identify which lines are the best performers for what region. So that's a pretty big research project undertaking in itself. And if you're interested in that, you can email me. You can see that jwoodworth@prenia.ca is my contact information, or you can email our research technician, Leanna, at research@ctcns.com. We're also undertaking a province-wide soil and foliar survey right now. So we started the middle of September, going out to growers' lots as they had signed up and expressed interest in having soil and foliar sampling done. And what we're doing is actually trying to match up what the soil is saying around the tree with what is actually happening in the individual tree. So we're tagging usually 10 trees per taking soil samples and a tissue or foliar sample off of the needles and sending it into the analytical lab and providing results to growers as well as saving this information so that we have it to better fertilizer recommendations in the future. The Christmas Tree Council of Scotia, they're very involved in all of these applications, but their main their main hold here would be association membership. They could direct you to those regional associations as well. Levy compliance, there is a levy on each Christmas tree that you sell from the province, which goes into all of the roles that the Christmas Tree Council does. They offer a newsletter that comes out pretty frequently and it's full of really great information. They also do some different conferences and technical sessions throughout the year. And the best contact for that would be Brittany Frenette, who I believe is on the call with us. Her email is posted there. It's outreach@ctcns.com, and she can sign you up for any mailing lists if you're interested in finding more information as well. If we go back down to the fourth row here, technical videos. So that is our webinar sessions. I mentioned all of the things I talked about in the production cycle. We have very in-depth kind of hour-long videos on those that are already posted too. So if you just go to YouTube and type in Christmas Tree Council of NS, you'll be able to find technical resources on anything you're interested in. So there's one there on soils, there's one there on shearing, there's some there on pest management, all kinds of different applications that get pretty in-depth. And the contact for that is Brittany as well, outreach@ctcns.com, and she can add you to the future list for next year's technical videos as well. One of our new projects that we just had released about 2 weeks ago is the podcast. So there's a Real Trees, Real Talk podcast, which is released through the Christmas Tree Council. It's available on all podcast platforms. So you can find it on Anchor, you can find it on Apple Music, you can find it on Spotify. Just search Real Trees, Real Talk. Right now, what we've been doing is going out and interviewing growers who are very experienced in the industry and getting them to tell us their stories about their successes and failures and just amusing stories in the industry. And we're recording that and putting it into a podcast. So there's a lot of just good kind of Christmassy, festive stories in it. And there's also some good technical resources and little tips in there as well. So that's a really good thing to listen to if you're interested in getting into the industry and wanting to hear some names about who's really involved. That's a good spot to start. Also, this year, COVID-19 put a little bit of a glitch into a lot of the sessions that we had been planning through the Christmas Tree Council. So we ended up putting together a Balsam Fir Forum conference. We were originally planning to host the annual general meeting for the Canadian Christmas Tree Council in Nova Scotia this year. But of course, since that was scheduled to be in August, we weren't able to bring anyone in for that. So we pulled together and got it online. And now we've developed an annual Balsam Fir Forum, which is, I like to say, the Netflix for Christmas tree growers. So we have speakers from literally across North America who are experts in the industry. And they are talking about everything from business management to pesticides to soils to pretty well anything you can think of to do with the industry. It is on there, and there's an expert speaking about it. So I would highly, highly recommend you go in and look at the Balsam Fir Forum. You can access that just by going www.balsamfirforum.com. If you have any trouble finding it, you can always email one of the CTCNS contacts. I've listed learning@ctcns.com here. And finally, one of the more recent projects that we released just in November is the certification in Christmas tree grading. So I mentioned how important shearing was to the development of a quality Christmas tree. And the reason for that is because when Christmas trees are sold, they are graded. And the better grade of tree you have, the more money you can get for the tree. So it's worth taking the time to learn what to look for when you're grading trees and what to do with your shearing to make sure that you have the highest quality trees you can get, which would be a premium tree by the USDA grade standards. So we were planning to offer this course over a weekend kind of workshop session. Again, Because of COVID-19, we had to modify that a little bit, and now we're doing an online version. So you can access this course. Registration is free for 2020. So if you get in before January of next year, you can go through and get your Christmas grading certificate free of charge from the Christmas Tree Council. The course consists of just 4 modules. There's a little multiple choice quiz in each module, and basically, if you go through and pass those quizzes with flying colors, we'll send you out a certificate, and you'll be far more in depth in your grading. You'll have a much better idea what to look for in the field. So I would absolutely recommend that course while it is free. And if you have any trouble registering for that, you can always email me and I will either try to fix the problem for you or I'll send it off to somebody in the IT department to help with any glitches that you may see. So that's kind of the nitty gritty of what the resources and contacts are for the industry right now. And as I mentioned before, please make sure that you email to get on the list for the future lunch break sessions because we will be revamping the sessions in 2021 to get even more technical and more exciting topics as requested from our growers. So thank you again for joining us. We'll be back into our regular technical sessions beginning in January. So as always, that'll be the last Tuesday of the month. And if you have suggestions or recommendations